Okay, anyway, let's get started. Uh, we'll learn about FPA, and if you are a biologist or a chemist, this might be an important technique to actually simulate the metabolic fluxes. So this stands for flex balance analysis. Now, you might wonder what exactly is flux. The flux is nothing but the reaction velocities. So the reaction velocities of the metabolic reactions. So we try to simulate this using this FPA analysis. So we may not know the reaction velocities of all the reactions in a metabolic network. So here is a method to actually simulate and find the optimal one. There's some assumptions here, and I'll tell you what is that assumption. First of all, you need to understand what is mass balance. So that's very fundamental thing. So if you have a substrate and there is a chemical reaction and you get the product and with the K rate, right? So that's the rate by which the molecules are striking or S is being converted to P, right? So molecules are striking is the way uh, protein, the enzyme is interacting with the metabolite, which is substrate here. Now, if I now write the change in S with respect to time, change in substrate, so that can be written as minus K times S, right? Same way we can write the dP by dt, and this is nothing but Ks. So what you observe here is the mass is balanced, right? So this is nothing but your mass balance thing. If we make use of this, so this amount is also nothing but this whole amount, either of this or this, is nothing but your reaction velocities basically. The rate of change of S or rate of change of P, rate of change of any node in the metabolic network is the reaction velocities. Now here is the fundamental assumption that we need to work around. This assumption is actually not, so as the name suggests, the assumption, so we are making some assumption which are actually may not be correct for many reactions. The assumption is following. The assumption is that all the reactions are at steady state. You know what the steady state is, right? Something is being accumulated and you get, this is your steady state, right? When the rate of change dx by dt is 0, that's your steady state. So that's the assumption, and it is already known that many reactions in our body are actually not at steady state. Okay, so there are a lot of noise out there. Reactions are at suboptimal states uh, and suboptimal and noisy states. But so biological systems are in general have a lot of noise around, and despite that, it is pretty robust. But nevertheless, that's the assumption that we make this assumption to simplify the things and simplify the things by putting dx by dt 0. Now let's make a small network. Let's say I make a small network, A metabolite to B metabolite. This is A, B, and C. Okay. Okay, now the one thing that you need to understand here is that I'm making a boundaries of the system here, and Those boundaries are following. Let's say this is my system. I define my system in this box. What is this system in terms of biology? This is one cell. Okay, this is my system. Okay, and this is a simplified scenario. We know that there are thousands of reactions, right? Now, the arrows that you see across this system are the interactions with the environment. Let's put up certain velocities on top of this reaction. So let's say this velocity is V1. You might wonder what is the velocity? These are the velocities, right? Now I have simplified. We just write V1, and this is V2 reaction. And the ones that interacts with the environment, which means in this case these are secretions. So let's say E1, E2, and E3. So that's my system. There could be an arrow which is going inside. That's the uptake of certain substance from the environment. So let's say this is my system, and let's work out the dx by dt thing. I need to write dx by dt now, right? So the first thing that we'll take is let's start with the a, dA by dt. What will be this change? Anybody? In terms of, we know the reaction, right? And you know this rule, this mass balance thing. So if something is being consumed, we have minus there, right? Something is being produced, we have plus there. So you remember minus plus thing we learned in the incidence matrix on the other day when we were learning about the Laplacian matrix. So that incidence matrix will come into play now. Okay, so in terms of V1, V2, so change of A would depend on V1, V2 and E1. Rest all the edges are not connected to A. Right, so since A is being consumed in V1 reaction, I say minus V1, right? A is being consumed in reaction 2 also, so I write minus V2. And A is being consumed in E1 reaction. So that's my change in A. I write the same thing for B. What is the change here? B is being accumulated in V1 reaction, right? B is being produced by V1 reaction. So it should be plus V1. And B is not involved in V2, so I don't write anything here. So here is the thing, I will put some spaces in this reactions equation that I'm writing. So let's put it here. I will write V1 in this column, V2 in this column, and you can understand why I'm doing so. Because we will get the matrix. We will try to convert this into a matrix. So E1, E2, E3. Right. So now V1 plus V1 here and minus E2. Right. So I write here minus E2. That's the change in B. Sorry. Okay, so dC by dt now. So C is being produced in V2 reaction and it's not connected, it's not engaged in V1 reaction. So nothing here, and we put V2 here plus V2 and minus E3. So I don't write anything. Okay, so E2 is written at the wrong place. Let us rub this. So we write minus E2 here in this column, right? And likewise, minus E3 in this column. There's no reason to put these spaces, but this will ease our matrix formation. Now I can, instead of writing these separate reactions, I can write one matrix reaction, right? One matrix representation for the same. So what I say is the following. I'm going to write it in matrix form. Let's say matrix of changes dx by dt is equal to, how can I write it in matrix form? What is this? This is minus 1, minus 1, minus 1, and then 0, 0, plus 1, 0, 0, minus 1, 0, right? So you remember incident matrix. So I'm writing incidence matrix now. It's just that the column and the rows are swapped here. Okay, that's the representation thing. That's the only thing. There's no conceptual change. This is still, so I'm going to write ABC here. This is my A here, substrate, the nodes, and your V1, V2, V3 is going to come here. Right, so V1 is minus 1 here because, let's just write it, V1, V2, V1, V2, and E3. So in the reaction V1, these are reactions are the columns and the nodes are the, the rows are the nodes. The edges are the columns and the nodes are the rows. So in V1 reaction, A is being consumed, so I write minus 1. You might say where the V1 has gone now, that will come into play in a moment. And minus 1 here, and nothing, minus 1 here, and 0, 0 here. Plus 1 here, 0, 0, and minus 1 here, and 0. Likewise, 0, plus 1, 0, 0, minus 1, right? Now what I do to get these magnitudes, V1, V2, V3, I got the signs here, but I need to get the magnitude. So I multiply this matrix with vector of flux. This is called flux vector. Right, so let us name them now. Okay, so this is the expanded matrix. Now we'll just use the matrix notation. This matrix is known as stoichiometric matrix, okay, denoted by S, capital S, and the bold letter. So, and this is your flux vector. This is given by V, smaller case, bold, right? So we have S times V. That's my matrix of reaction velocities for all the reactions in the metabolic network. So your stoichiometric matrix S is capturing the network structure, right? Metabolic network. This is not adjacency matrix. This is the incident matrix. Now, important thing is that what happens at the steady state? Dx by dt is 0, right? So this whole thing should be 0 at steady state. That's the assumption. You might say, why did I do so? Because this is the fundamental assumption of FBA. Okay, so this has to be 0. So where are we leading to now? So what we are saying is S times V is 0, right? Now you might wonder what is the objective. In the beginning I said that we calculate the flux vector, right? So in the flux balance analysis, we are interested in the flux that we simulate. what is flux? The reaction velocities. And in terms of matrix algebra, this is the flux vector that we are interested. So we are interested in what is V, right? How can we get the V? This is known to us. S is known to us. This is the network, right? Known network. And of course, this is incidence matrix. And flux vector is not known to us. That's what we want to know. But since I know the condition that SV should be equal to 0 at steady state, you might say that I can actually start with various values of the flux vector, and then I do some optimization and I will find a choice of V which is satisfying this equation. The problem is following. You can do so. There will be too many choices of flux vector that satisfy this condition. That satisfy this constraint, right? So we do not know. So there will be a lot of choices of V which will make this whole product is equal to 0. So we do not know which one is real because the search space is very big. Now, this search space could be even bigger if your S is very dense, your network is very dense. But we know that the real world networks are generally very sparse. Okay, so network structure is the first thing that will reduce your search space to find the flux vector. More sparser the network, lesser the space for the vector, flux vector in the optimization process. Okay, so it is clear that SV is equal to 0 cannot be used to calculate V. I'm sorry, the network has gone here. Sorry, the network and the power shows. Are we connected?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the thing is that we cannot directly use SV. Okay. So there is a trick now. What we do, we try to find out a function. Okay, that we try to use for optimization. And one of those functions is following. Z function, which is growth. Okay, the growth. Growth function. So, Z is, which is the inner product of Ci times Vi, where we know what is Vi. These are the elements of the flux vector, which is not known to us, right? This is not known to us. This is pretty much known to us. You might wonder what is it. I'll tell you in a while. You might also wonder why do we use the growth function? You can change it. Right? So we have to maximize this function first of all. We need to maximize growth. We need to maximize this function basically, right? Okay, so in terms of matrix, you can write it as Z is the vector, which will be the, sorry, this is the value. It's not. It's the dot product. It's not. Okay, so this is incorrect. We can't write in bold. This small z is a scalar value. This is going to be dot product of these two vectors, right? Okay, now, what is C? C is a vector, a row vector, of course, because it's transpose. It's transpose, and it identifies which reactions in the metabolic network we want to optimize. Let us say you are trying to look at the production of certain metabolite, let's say alcohol production from the bacteria. Then you will identify the reactions which are involved in production of alcohol and only try to use the flux for, calculate the flux for those reactions to get the optimal production of alcohol. Let's say I say the first reaction is not involved, I say second reaction is involved, third reaction is involved, and rest all is my 0, 0, 0, right? So this vector identifies which reactions we want to focus upon, and this is your C transpose, and this is your B vector, which is nothing but V1, V2, V1, V2, V3. So now you wonder, why do we do this maximization of growth function? For example, you are producing something. In this case, I took the example of alcohol, but you can produce any enzyme also, which is of some medical use or anything. You are producing the human insulin in bacteria for the treatment of diabetes, and then you want to increase the growth, right? Considering those reactions, or otherwise also you can identify all the reactions which increases the growth, right? But then you need to be careful that while increasing that growth, your insulin production is also going up. It's not like you're increasing the growth, all the reactions which are involved in growth, but then by optimizing that, the production of insulin is going down because you didn't identify those reactions. So one has to be careful what reactions we're identifying in the process of maximization of this function. Okay, and likewise, you can also minimize this function. Okay, this is not always growth. Let's say I say this is energy function now. I identify the reactions which are involved in, which are needed to be energy effective. Sorry, the cost effective, which will require lesser energy. We want to minimize that energy of production of something. If I'm producing alcohol, I do not want too much of substrate, too much of energy given to the bacteria to produce that alcohol or any other product. So I want to minimize the energy consumption by the bacteria while keeping the production up, right? Then you also minimize this function for the reactions which are consuming a lot of energy. Right? So there could be multiple use of this function, and you can identify your reaction using C vector. So what you do, you take this function Z, and you are maximizing this. If this is growth function, you're maximizing this subject to, now you put constraint. Because now also, if you just optimize this, you can have multiple choices of V, right? But if you reduce the search space for V, this is feasible then. This will take less time on computer. You will not have too many choices of V, right? So what we do is the following: in subject to constraint, and I know one constraint of steady state, which is this, right? So I use SV is equal to 0 as constraint now. That's the trick. This is the constraint. You can't take any V here. That V has to satisfy SV is equal to 0. That's the number one constraint. You can have multiple other constraints. For example, you can say my VI value, these were metrics, right? Right now this is scalar value is above 0. The rate of the reaction, velocity of the reaction is above 0, which means that the reactions are always positive. These are irreversible reactions. Now, some of you might not feel comfortable why the metabolic reactions have to be irreversible, but there is a fix. And this is less than certain max value. And you know what is Vmax? Vmax you can get this value from biochemistry books, and This is the same from Michaelis-Menten reaction, the Vmax calculation and all that. So if you have Vmax value with you, you can say that I am reducing the space of Vi values in the flux vector. Now this tells you that the reactions are irreversible. So then you might say that I have a reaction which is actually reversible. Then how do I represent? So what the trick is that you consider these two reactions as independent. You say this is one reaction, right? And then you say P2S is another reaction. So then these are irreversible, but then we have taken care of this problem. Okay, so these are the two major constraints. There are other constraints I'm not talking right now. We will see that. Now, what is the use of this, right? So the use comes the moment you have a mutant with you and you want to see that if you delete a certain gene, certain enzyme, what is happening to the organism, to the bacteria, to the growth. Is it going up, going down, not affected? So let's say you plot the growth function z as a function of time t, and let us say this is your wild type here. This is quite static, the growth function, and this is simulated by us from this reaction. After optimization is done, you plot the z as a function of t. Okay, now let us say I have a mutant of particular enzyme, one enzyme from the metabolic reaction. So if I have, let's say there is an enzyme here, and if I delete this protein, then this reaction is gone, right? No reaction between P2S. Let's say we have that deletion here, and then what happens? Let us say that I introduce the deletion somewhere here. Right now, growth rate is equal to the wild type. The moment deletion happens, growth rate has gone down, and this is, we learn from the flux balance analysis. So if this is my mutant, deletion mutant. So if this happens, there is an obvious conclusion, and that conclusion is that this gene that we had E was essential for the organism. So this implies the essentiality of the reaction, right? Now consider a scenario where nothing happens to or the growth is impacted only to a moderate level only. Let's say it goes here and then see, this is also another mutant of, let's say this is mutant 2. Okay, so this tells you that somehow this implies that this reaction where the mutant 2, the gene 2 was involved that we deleted, is somehow having a redundant edge in the network. So this implies the robustness, in local robustness of metabolic network or circuit. Now you might wonder how is that possible? That one mutant, when you remove, the organism die, the bacteria die, another mutant, nothing much happens. So here is the thing. What's happening is the following. Let's say that you have this circuit. This is your S, the substrate, and this is your final product here. Now, if this was the reaction and I remove this enzyme over here, which was catalyzing this reaction, what will happen? If I delete this one, this reaction will terminate here, right? Now there is nothing here. So this enzyme seems to be essential now because this reaction terminates and the final product is not formed now. So this is essentiality, right? This marks the essentiality of this particular reaction, right? So this reaction was essential, otherwise product is not formed, and if that product was important for the survival, it becomes an essential gene. Now think of another scenario now, where we have a similar circuit. However, there was a redundant path. right? So now I had the deletion here. I have deleted this one. So what will happen now? This path is redundant, terminates here. So what bacteria will do is that, or flux balance analysis will do, is that it will find another path and product is still formed. So these kind of redundant paths are bringing the robustness, right, in the metabolic network, and there are many such paths. So this can be captured here. So this is what it is we are talking about here, right? Okay. Now, very important thing. Let me make another edge here, and there is the reason I have to make that edge. More often than not, uh, what happens in reality? These are all simulations, right? Wild type mutant and mutant 2. Let's say I had this mutant now, mutant 2. If you really delete that experimentally, if you genetically delete that enzyme, this enzyme here, okay, and look at the bacterial growth through an experiment, it doesn't look like this one. The trajectory doesn't look like this one. It goes like that, okay, and there is an impact very similar to the mutant 1, and it remains like that, and over the time this will reach to the level that we predicted through FBA, right? So this blue line is predicted through the FBA, and this white line is the reality. We are talking about mutant 2 now. This white line is the reality. So what's happening? What's happening? Why? So which means FBA prediction is incorrect. It's actually not incorrect. If you look at the steady state thing, the final result, we get the same result here, right? So FBA prediction at the steady state is correct. But if you look at the trajectory, and if you are not looking at if you didn't run your FBA for sufficiently long time, then your result will be somewhere here, which is very, very different from the FBA prediction. If you look at the real experiment, you see that at this particular time point here, these are very, very different results, right? So FBA is fine for the optimal state, or the steady state of the organism, where the biologists in this group, in this class, would appreciate that what's happening here at this transition. What is happening at this transition? So bacteria was adjusting, right, throughout this, and then it accumulated more mutations, which uh, ascribe the adaptation against that error that we had, and it will again get into another state, optimal growth, through more changes in the circuits, right? So there is some kind of adaptation going on to the change in the system. How do we capture this? So that's important. So let's look at a method through which we can capture it. Let me redraw this in a new page. Let's say this is your Y type here, and this is FBA. This is mutant 2 FBA prediction. This is mutant 1 FBA prediction. And this is mutant 2 reality. Okay, and let me draw the circuit. and our circuit was following. Okay, now let us say that we had an error in this edge. Sorry. Let's say the error is on this edge. So this enzyme here is deleted. That's our. We are only talking about M1, M2. Okay, we're not talking about M1 now. Okay, so this is, let's say, this is my M23, right? This is gone. What will my FBA do now? If this is gone, this path is not existed, right? So this was my optimal path in the void type, right? This was my optimal path in the void type. This path doesn't exist. Now, FBA will try to find another path. How will it find? It will change the flux vector. It will upregulate this edge, right? The flux reaction velocity of this particular reaction uh, will be faster, will be accelerated, right? And likewise, this will also be escalated, right? However, since this reaction is not being used, this will be uh, de-escalated, right? And likewise, maybe this is also de-escalated, but this was anyway non-optimal path. This line was, vertical line is the non-optimal path. So it has to make 3 changes FBA, but it will do that in that optimization. So the new path will be, which will be in blue color. So this path is predicted by, used by FBA, right? This is your FBA. This was your wild type path. And this is your FBA mutant 2. Okay. But we know that this is actually somehow is not the reality. There is a change that we are ignoring which has happened here, right? So what nature does is the following. If this enzyme is gone here, okay, what nature will do is the following. It will try to find a path through a minimal adjustment. It will not make this radical change. So this change in blue line shows a radical change because 3 reactions are perturbed now. It has to escalate 2 reactions velocities, and third V value has to be de-escalated so that this path is taken by for the production of T. Now, nature doesn't work like that. It will look for the minimal adjustment because now this adjustment will happen through certain mutations in these enzyme involving these 3 reactions, right? Some mutation will escalate this, other mutation will escalate this, and that will take more time because there are 3 enzymes which has to be mutated now in order to escalate the rates of these reactions. It will do the minimal thing. So what it does is the following. This reaction was anywhere there, right? This reaction is anywhere there. This is gone. It will try to escalate this one now. This reaction was anywhere there. So escalations are now happening in following manner. This reaction will be escalated here, and this reaction will be escalated here in reality. This is reality. This was anyway up, right? So if we don't touch this. So now nature is not touching the 3 reaction, it's only touching the 2 reaction through minimal adjustment. Okay, this red color thing is the minimal adjustment. It may not be the best example that I'm showing you, minimal adjustment. Okay. However, in doing so, it has opted for a non-optimal path. isn't it? This path is not optimal one because the number of edges are more, right? This path here is non-optimal one, right? Because there are multiple edges, number one, and number two, the reaction velocities were not optimal in the wild type. So this is, let's say, suboptimal path which has been taken up by the bacteria in reality. Okay, so which means that to simulate the reality, one has to look at the minimal adjustment during the FBA, not the radical adjustment as we did in the blue color line, right? So we have to do minimal adjustment along the path, which means that the changes will happen very near to the reaction which is now deleted, okay? Not far away in the network. So what we do is the following. In this optimization function, okay, so now one thing that you need to realize is that this path that I just draw is the non-optimal one. Okay, so non-optimal means no matter how much you upregulate this thing, these two reactions, there is a limit to these reactions. Okay, which would over the time the nature would realize and shift to the blue one. Okay. So the red color path here, this red color path here this red color path here is non-optimal. Or suboptimal, whatever you call it. Okay. So there is a constraint here for the enzymes involved in this part that you can't escalate them. All right. To escalate them beyond certain level, there is a particular Vmax and you can't go beyond that. So bacteria takes up this path, which is suboptimal, which will compromise the growth, and you come here. This is the compromised growth, right? But then nature realizes, okay, the system realizes that, okay, this is suboptimal path and I'm dying. Okay, so then it will shift. It will make more changes. Changes means mutations, right? It will make more changes and take the another path, which is predicted by FBA at first place. So which means that if I want to get this information here, the suboptimal growth, non-optimal growth, I need to change my FBA. FBA has predicted the one which will eventually bacteria will lead to, because that's the optimal one, right? So we need to do something now. Okay, so which means that our simulation method is not complete. FBA has limitation, right? So I said that this uses this function C transpose V subject to, it was subject to SV is equal to 0, number one. Number two, there are limitations. Right, and now you put another constraint. You say that the change should be minimal between wild types. So you do another minimization during this maximization. You opt for the flux vector, which shows minimal change between the wild type to the mutant. Okay, so you don't look for the changes which are involving three reactions, but instead look for the ones which are just two reactions. Okay, so that will be minimized from the wild type. So how can you do that? You can use this Euclidean function basically. You say you minimizing Euclidean distance between these two vectors, right? You add this into your constraint that whenever there is a possibility, I choose the minimal distance between these two. I don't directly jump to the blue path. I first go to, I try to go to the red one. So which means that now if I use this method, I can actually look at the non-optimal growth, which is here, right? So doing so, I can do this path, and which can predict this thing. So now if I plot it over here, so then my change the line type. My prediction through this method that I have changed will come here. Now this method is known as MoMA. I will upload the papers for these methods, which stands for uh, metabolic optimization using minimal adjustment. Okay, so this will predict, this is your MoMA will predict this thing. Okay, MoMA, and this is mutant 2 again. So what do you learn? What do we learn here? If I use MoMA along with FBA, okay, and I first run MoMA without, sorry, first run FBA without MoMA on my mutant, and I get, sorry, I get this path, right? So I know what will be the final result, and then I use MoMA to actually get this level. So if I combine these two, I am close to reality, right? So I have captured this information here, where what was the level immediately after mutation. Okay, immediately after mutation, not over the time, but FBA will predict what is the level after significant number of generations, right? So this is the FBA and MoMA, very important methods. And if you, these methods are very fast also. Several thousands of reactions, more than 2,000, 3,000 of reactions can be simulated within seconds. There are a number of packages available for this. And I'll give you the reading material for this. So the whole idea is that we try to reduce the search space for this function, maximization function, by putting constraint. And to simulate the effect just after mutation, we use MoMA, and we put another constraint of getting closer. The flux factor should be closer to the wild type. Okay, it shouldn't be very distant from the wild type. Then we will predict what happens immediately after mutation or deletion of M2. FBA will predict what happens over the time after some saturation, after some optimization in the metabolic network, that nature realizes that the optimal path is elsewhere, so we need to introduce more mutations. Okay, so this was FBA, very important method. In the next class, we will look at some of the gene regulatory networks, the Hill's equation and the response time, the autoregulation loop, autoregulatory loop, negative autoregulatory loop, positive autoregulatory loop. And likewise in maybe 1 or 2 classes or 3 classes, and then I will move on with the algorithms. Okay, some of the important algorithms. No, so somebody.
So,
yeah. Tell me.
sir, we have class on Monday.
What is there on Monday?
Do we have on Monday?
I am not able to hear you. You are asking.
Sir, Monday is holy.
Monday is what?
Holy, sir. There is holy on Monday.
No. So public holidays we can't take classes. We got instruction from the top. So we won't.
Okay.
This Monday is holy, right? Okay. Okay, so we will not have class, but there is a question from Mridula. The complete metabolic network is unknown. How this affect the FBA result? No, it is known. If you look at the E. coli metabolic network, most of the reactions are known. You can open up your book, Lehinger biochemistry book. All the reactions are listed there. integrate those reactions into a network. That's your network, and that is also available in databases. But I'm just telling you that all the reactions that you see, the glycolysis pathway, the Krebs cycle, and nitrate metabolism, and amino acid metabolism, and all those metabolic reactions are listed in the Hinger book, and that's your network. And at least for E. coli, it is largely known. So most of this flux balance analysis is actually done on bacteria, particularly on E. coli, not really on human. Or you can do that if you can dedicate it to a certain part of the network only and do some analysis, but this is largely constrained to the prokaryotes. Okay. Any more questions?
Sir, can we say that MoMA is the last thing that a cell would want to have? Because I don't think it's it is the last option the cell is having to survive to complete a reaction.
It's not the last thing actually. That's the first thing it will do. It will do the minimal adjustment. Okay. And if the reaction was actually very essential and there was no redundancy in the past, it will actually die. Okay, so this is the first thing that it will do. It will try to, nature will try to, let's say we are pumping the nutrients and pushing the E. coli or bacteria to actually grow. You know, you still have something to do. It will start, because bacteria is growing very rapidly, it can accumulate mutations, and the mutations which are advantageous will be selected. There will be few changes that will happen nearby, okay, and that will make it survive to very small level. So the colonies becomes very, very few if you grow it on a dish. And then if you keep on growing, keep on supporting them, keep on, there will be radical changes will happen in the genome. In fact, people have seen that genomic rearrangement happens, copy number, lot of crazy things happens, and then it will find another way to actually have the optimal state. It may not be essentially what I showed you here. It might be a very drastic change elsewhere, which is bringing it to grow. And you might also say philosophically that that bacteria doesn't remain same. If you have genomic rearrangements and too many copy numbers and so many mutations, it actually changes phenotype. It looks different now, right? So, but that's how evolution happens. One of the important implication here, and let me show you in another slide. If we have this, this kind of network, and we had deletion of this edge, right? In fact, now the nature is struggling and is taking this path. First, it is taking this path. This is only an example, okay? It might be, it's difficult to find at what level during the time it has taken this path. It might actually take certain remote paths also, okay? Certain other strategy of survival, okay? If you don't produce the required product, it may find something else. Okay, I don't need that product now. I want something else, X, Y, Z, which can give me another advantage and I will survive, right? So that also can happen, but we are learning about a particular aspect only. That's why we focused upon that. There could be redundant path. Now we know that from this diagram that this is the optimal one. As an engineer, as a synthetic biologist, what can I do actually here to directly make the bacteria recognize this path? Anybody?
We can create the mutations so that
Yeah. So, you know, this is counterintuitive now. What I'm going to do is following. I will delete this edge also. This is anyway not there. I have deleted this one. Okay. Now, bacteria cannot go to take this path, green one, right? Green one is gone now. This path cannot be taken because this edge is also gone. So, bacteria is now bound to take this path, optimal one. So, you see it's surviving now, okay? Right after the mutation, immediately after the mutation. So your trajectory would be like this only, right? this was your wild type here, wild type is the mutant. It will not go to a suboptimal state anymore. Now, this is counterintuitive because you are introducing more errors in the system and rescuing the system, right? So generally you think that if you introduce more errors, it will disturb the system and it will not work. But what's happening in biology, if you know the network structure, you can actually introduce more errors to make it actually robust or make it function optimally. And this is called synthetic rescue. This is a very important thing. And you might wonder that this is just a theoretical concept. No, this has been shown experimentally. People have done experiment and it does work. You introduce more errors and it will take another path. So you're actually engineering the system in a way that you have this error, let me introduce another one, and now it has taken another path. At the cost of what? At the cost of robustness is gone from the system now. Because earlier we had 2-3 paths, right? Earlier we had 3 paths to reach to the target. To get the desired product. Now we only have one path. And now if in future any error happens in this path, we don't have any survival strategy. Okay. So we are compromising with the robustness for future. But however, as a synthetic biologist, so you may not want, you may not bother about that. If it doesn't work, then you start again, right? You can again take the wild type bacteria and do those mutations and get the desired product and so on. This is called synthetic rescue. I will upload the paper for this also. People have shown that in glycolysis pathway, they have actually introduced more mutations and it was actually escaping the error, okay, because of this redundancy. Okay. Any other question? Okay, if not, then should we stop? All right, I'm stopping here.